This story is titled, My Psycho-Biological Sister Falsely Accused Me of SA. Now the truth came out, and they want to reconcile. Hey everyone, we put a lot of time and effort into finding these stories to keep bringing you the best content. If you enjoy what I do, it would mean the world if you hit that subscribe button. Your support really makes all the difference and keeps this journey going strong. Thanks so much for being here with me. Now let's start the video. OP starts by saying, when I think back to the moment my life changed, it doesn't feel real. It's like watching a slow-motion car crash. You know what's coming, but you can't do anything to stop it. I was 18, living on a military base in Japan with my dad, his third wife Maria, my biological sister Lily, 15, and 3 younger stepsisters. Life wasn't perfect, far from it, but it was predictable. That predictability, however, shattered one quiet Sunday afternoon. I was in my room, working on a history essay that wasn't due for another week. I liked being ahead of deadlines, partly because school gave me a sense of control, and partly because it kept me away from Lily. Our relationship had always been rocky. We were like oil and water. She was loud, impulsive, and always seeking attention, while I preferred solitude and order. Our fights were legendary, from screaming matches over stolen phone chargers to full-blown Cold Wars over the TV remote. But for all our differences, I never thought she'd go as far as she did. That day, my dad called me into his office. His voice was serious, the kind of tone that made your stomach drop. I walked in to find Maria sitting stiffly in one of the chairs. Her usual warm smile was gone, replaced by a tight-lipped expression that screamed discomfort. My dad gestured for me to sit. "We need to talk," he began, his voice heavy. "It's about your sister." I froze. Lily was in the States with our mom, sent there after one too many blowouts with Maria and the stepsisters. She hadn't been gone long, maybe 6 months, and though her absence had brought a strange calm to the house, I hadn't given her much thought. Now dread started creeping in. "She's made an accusation," Maria chimed in, her voice hesitant. She's saying you hurt her." I frowned, confused. Hurt her? How? What could she possibly mean? Before I could ask, my dad dropped the bombshell. "She's accusing you of sexual assault," he said bluntly. For a moment, the words didn't register. I stared at them, my mind scrambling to make sense of what I'd just heard. It felt like someone had knocked the wind out of me. "What?" I finally managed, my voice barely above a whisper. "Number. That's not true." "We believe you," Maria said quickly, but the way her eyes darted to the floor told a different story. "But we have to take this seriously." Take it seriously? What did that even mean? My dad explained that they'd already reported it to the authorities. Protocol, he called it. I felt like I was drowning. My own sister, my flesh and blood, was saying I did something so vile, so unthinkable, and my parents had gone straight to the cops without even talking to me first. "She's lying," I said firmly, my voice shaking with anger and fear. "You know I'd never do anything like that?" My dad just nodded, his expression unreadable. Maria reached for my hand, but I pulled away, unable to bear the false comfort. Their belief in me felt hollow, like they were saying the words because they had to, not because they meant them. I couldn't understand it. How could they say they believed me but still treat me like I was guilty? The next few weeks were a blur. A social worker came to the house to interview me, asking invasive, humiliating questions about my childhood and my relationship with Lily. "Have you ever touched her inappropriately? Have you ever said anything that could be taken the wrong way?" I answered every question honestly, but it didn't matter. The look in her eyes said she'd already made up her mind. At school, things got worse. Living on a military base meant rumors spread like wildfire. By the end of the week, everyone seemed to know about the accusation. Friends avoided me in the hallways, their laughter dying the moment I walked by. Parents stopped letting their kids come over. Even teachers started acting differently, their smiles forced and their conversations clipped. I became a ghost, floating through my own life, unseen and unwanted. At home, the atmosphere was suffocating. My dad and Maria treated me like I was made of glass, like one wrong move would shatter me, or maybe expose some hidden truth they didn't want to confront. They implemented new rules to avoid misunderstandings. I wasn't allowed to be alone with my stepsisters anymore, and Maria made a point of hovering whenever we were in the same room. The humiliation was unbearable. One night, I confronted my dad. "Do you really believe me?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Because it doesn't feel like you do." "I believe you," he said after a long pause. "But we have to handle this the right way. For the family." "For the family?" I repeated, incredulous. "What about me? This isn't just some family issue, it's my life. Do you have any idea what people are saying about me? What this is doing to me?" He didn't answer. Instead, he told me to be patient, to trust the system. But how could I trust a system that had already branded me as guilty? The worst part was knowing that my own parents, people who were supposed to protect me, were the ones who'd set the wheels in motion. Meanwhile, Lily was living her best life back in the States. Through the family grapevine, I heard she'd joined her high school's cheerleading squad and was the center of attention in every room she walked into. It was infuriating. She'd turned my life into a living hell. And for what? Because she was jealous that I got to stay in Japan while she was sent to live with our unstable mom? The thought made my blood boil. One night, I called her. I needed answers. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, my voice trembling with anger and desperation. "You know it's not true." Her response was infuriatingly casual. "I don't want to talk about it," she said, her tone cold and dismissive. Then she hung up, leaving me staring at my phone in disbelief. That was the moment I realized there was no reasoning with her. She'd made up her mind, spun her web of lies, and now she was watching me struggle to untangle myself. It wasn't just betrayal, it was cruelty, and it wasn't over yet. As the investigation dragged on, my life unraveled piece by piece. Colleges I'd applied to sent rejection letters. Friends drifted away, and every day felt like a battle just to keep my head above water. But even as everything fell apart, one thought kept me going. I would survive this. I didn't know how, but I'd find a way. Because if Lily thought she could destroy me and walk away unscathed, she was wrong. Dead wrong. Kira. The investigation should have been the worst of it, but it wasn't. That was just the opening act. Once the initial shock wore off, the real fallout began. If the accusation had felt like a punch to the gut, the aftermath was a slow, suffocating chokehold. After the social worker left, my dad sat me down again. He looked more uncomfortable than I'd ever seen him, like he wanted to be anywhere but there. "The base community is small," he started, his words careful. "People are going to talk. I need you to keep your head down." Keep my head down? Wanted to laugh in his face. Rumors were already flying, and I was the center of them. Kids at school whispered as I passed by. Parents pulled their kids away from me, as if proximity to me was contagious. My dad telling me to keep my head down was like asking someone drowning to hold their breath a little longer. Maria added her own version of damage control. She started micromanaging my every move. "Maybe you shouldn't go to the community pool right now," she'd suggest with that overly sweet tone she used when pretending to care. Or, "Why don't you skip the next youth group meeting? It's best not to stir the pot." I wasn't stirring anything. I was sitting silently, watching my life fall apart while everyone acted like this was just some awkward phase we'd all laugh about someday. The military base's gossip machine wasn't just limited to kids and their parents. It seeped into every corner of the community. My dad's co-workers looked at him differently. Maria's book club stopped inviting her to their weekly gatherings. Even the family's weekly trips to the commissary became exercises in avoidance, as people gave us wide berths in the aisles. Then there was school. It wasn't just the students who treated me differently, it was the teachers too. Mr. Collins, my history teacher, used to joke around with me during class, asking about my gaming habits or what new gadgets I was into. Now he barely looked me in the eye. When he called on me to answer a question, it felt like he was bracing himself for something awful. It wasn't what he said, it was what he didn't say. The silence and the gaps, the way he avoided my gaze, spoke volumes. The walls of home weren't safe either. Maria implemented new precautions that stripped away whatever shreds of normalcy I had left. At first, I wasn't allowed to be alone with my stepsisters. Then, it escalated to me needing Maria to be in the room anytime I interacted with them, even for something as mundane as handing over the TV remote. "It's not about you," she said one night, as if that made it better. "It's about appearances." Appearances. That word had started to haunt me. It wasn't about truth or justice. It was about how the family looked to everyone else. My dad, the proud military officer, and Maria, the smiling, picture-perfect stepmom, couldn't afford to be seen as the parents who let something slide. They needed to be the ones who took every accusation seriously, no matter the cost. The cost, of course, was me. I thought about running away more times than I could count. There were nights I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, imagining packing a bag and disappearing. But where would I go? My mom? She wasn't exactly an option. She was still recovering from her latest divorce and could barely keep herself afloat, let alone take me in. My extended family? They'd already started distancing themselves, sending vague texts about letting the process play out. The process. Another word I'd grown to hate. So I stayed. Not because I wanted to, but because I had nowhere else to go. Lily, meanwhile, was thriving. Or at least that's what I heard through the family grapevine. She had a tight-knit group of friends and was excelling in her classes. The news reached me in fragmented updates from relatives who still felt obligated to keep me in the loop. "She's doing really well," my aunt said over the phone one day. "Your mom says she's happier than she's been in years." Happier. That word was a knife to the gut. While my life was crumbling, Lily was out there living her best life, the center of attention like she'd always wanted. It wasn't fair. None of it was. As the weeks turned into months, the investigation dragged on. No charges had been filed, yet, but the threat loomed over me like a storm cloud. Every time the phone rang, I flinched, expecting the worst. I avoided looking at the mailbox, terrified of finding a letter from some authority demanding I appear in court. The uncertainty was worse than anything else. It was like waiting for an axe to fall, not knowing when or if it ever would. One night, I overheard Maria talking to my dad in the kitchen. Her voice was hushed, but the tension in her words was impossible to miss. "I don't know how much longer we can keep this up," she said. "It's affecting the girls. It's affecting us. Maybe it would be better if he went somewhere else for a while." Went somewhere else? My blood ran cold. They were already treating me like I was guilty. Now they were talking about sending me away? I didn't stick around to hear my dad's response. I didn't need to. I already knew how little I mattered in this so-called family. The breaking point came a few weeks later. A friend I'd known since middle school, one of the few people who hadn't completely cut me off, invited me to a small party. It was the first time I'd been included in anything in months, and for a brief moment, I felt normal again. But that feeling didn't last. I arrived at the party to find everyone huddled in a corner, whispering. When they saw me, the whispers stopped, and the room went uncomfortably silent. My stomach sank as I realized why. Someone had brought up the accusation. "Hey, I didn't know you were coming," the host said awkwardly, scratching the back of his neck. "Listen, man, some of the parents, they're not cool with you being here." I stared at him, stunned. "Parents? Thought this was just us." "Yeah, but, word gets around. Word gets around." That was it. That was all it took to unravel whatever fragile connection I still had to my old life. I left the party without saying another word, my chest tight with anger and shame. That was the moment I realized there was no going back. Whatever life I'd had before Lily's lie was gone, and no amount of denial or patience would bring it back. Back at home, I sat on my bed and stared at the ceiling, the weight of everything pressing down on me. I couldn't stay here. I couldn't keep living like this, surrounded by people who saw me as a problem to be managed. But what choice did I have? I grabbed my phone and pulled up the message from my uncle, the only family member who had consistently reached out. "If you need a place to stay, our door is always open," he'd written a few weeks ago. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the screen. Leaving meant giving up. It meant admitting that Lily's lie had won, that she'd succeeded in driving me out. But staying meant losing myself entirely. With a deep breath, I hit reply. Leaving wasn't easy. It wasn't dramatic either. No slammed doors, no screaming matches. Just me, a packed duffel bag, and a goodbye note left on the kitchen counter. I didn't have the energy for a confrontation, and I doubted it would have made a difference. They didn't want me there, not really, and I couldn't survive another day feeling like an unwelcome guest in my own home. I caught the earliest bus off the base and headed straight to my uncle's place in Okinawa. The trip was a blur of anxiety and second-guessing. What if they didn't really mean it when they said I could stay? What if I showed up and they turned me away, like everyone else seemed to? But when I knocked on the door, my aunt answered with a smile that almost made me break down right there on the porch. "Come in," she said, pulling me into a hug. "You're safe here." Safe. I hadn't felt that in months. Living with my aunt and uncle was like stepping into a parallel universe. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't walking on eggshells. They didn't look at me like I was broken or dangerous. They asked how I was doing, how they could help. It was overwhelming in the best way, but the relief was short-lived. The investigation wasn't over, and even though I was miles away from my dad's house, the weight of it still hung over me. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart jumped into my throat. Every time I saw a military officer or someone in uniform, I felt like they were there to drag me away. The constant fear was exhausting. One day, my uncle sat me down after dinner. He was a quiet man, not one for long speeches. But when he spoke, you listened. "Look," he said, "I know this isn't fair. None of it is. But you can't let this define you. You've got to start thinking about what comes next." "What comes next?" I repeated, laughing bitterly. "My life's over. No college is going to take me. No one's going to hire me." "That's not true," he said firmly. "You're smart. You're capable. You've just been knocked off course. But a detour isn't the end of the road." Ichikarawas. His words stuck with me. I didn't know how to fix the mess my sister had made, but I knew I couldn't sit around waiting for my life to magically get better. So I started looking for ways to rebuild. My uncle suggested the military. It wasn't what I'd ever planned for myself, but it offered structure, discipline, and, most importantly, a way out of the chaos that had consumed my life. The application process wasn't easy. Every form I filled out, every interview I sat through, felt like walking a tightrope. What if someone brought up the accusation? What if it disqualified me? But no one did. The investigation hadn't turned up any evidence, and as far as the military was concerned, I had a clean slate. It was the first real break I'd gotten in months. Boot camp was brutal, but it gave me something I desperately needed: focus. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't consumed by thoughts of Lily, or my family, or the life I'd lost. I was too busy pushing my body to its limits, learning to shoot, march, and follow orders. It was hard, but it was a welcome distraction. The camaraderie was another unexpected gift. My fellow recruits didn't care about my past. They cared about whether I could pull my weight, whether I had their backs in the field. For the first time, I felt like I belonged somewhere. Things started to look up after boot camp. I was assigned to a unit stationed overseas, far from Japan and all the memories tied to it. I threw myself into my work, learning everything I could and excelling in ways I hadn't thought possible. It was like I'd been given a second chance, and I wasn't about to waste it. But even as I built this new life, the shadows of the past lingered. I couldn't escape the feeling that Lily's lie was still out there, waiting to resurface and ruin everything all over again. And then, one day, it did. I was sitting in my barracks, scrolling through my phone after a long day, when I got a text from my mom. We hadn't spoken in months. She was firmly on Lily's side, and I hadn't forgiven her for it. But curiosity got the better of me, and I opened the message. "Your sister's been hospitalized," it read. "She tried to hurt herself." For a moment, I just stared at the screen. I didn't know how to feel. On one hand, no one deserves to feel so hopeless they want to end their life. On the other hand, this was Lily, the person who had lied about me, destroyed my reputation, and left me to pick up the pieces. Compassion and anger warred inside me, leaving me paralyzed. Before I could even process the message, another text came through. This one was from my dad. "She admitted she lied," it read. "She told her therapist. She said she was jealous of you staying in Japan and wanted attention." I dropped the phone. The words blurred together as rage bubbled up inside me. Jealousy? Attention? Those were her reasons for tearing my life apart? For making me feel like a criminal in my own home? For nearly destroying my future? I paced the room, fists clenched, trying to calm the storm inside me. Part of me wanted to call her, to scream at her, to demand an explanation. But what would that accomplish? She'd already shown she was willing to manipulate anyone and everyone to get what she wanted. An apology from her wouldn't mean anything. The next day, I got a call from my dad. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "She's struggling," he said, his voice heavy. "She feels terrible about what she did. She's asking for your forgiveness." I laughed bitterly. Forgiveness? That's rich. Did she feel terrible while I was being interrogated by a social worker? Did she feel terrible when I lost all my friends? Or when I couldn't get into college? Yeah, no thanks. "She's your sister," he said, as if that absolved her of everything. "She's young. She made a mistake." "A mistake?" I snapped. "Dropping a glass is a mistake. Forgetting someone's birthday is a mistake. What she did was calculated. She knew exactly what she was doing." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Finally, my dad sighed. "You don't have to forgive her, but maybe think about what holding on to this anger is doing to you." I hung up without responding. I didn't need his lectures. What I needed was to keep moving forward, to keep building the life Lily had tried to take from me. Back at base, I threw myself into work with renewed determination. If my family wanted to dwell on the past, that was their choice. But I had no intention of letting them drag me back into the chaos. I was done being their scapegoat. From now on, my life was mine, and I was going to make the most of it. The months after my dad's call felt like a turning point. For the first time, I wasn't looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next piece of fallout to hit. Lily's admission to her therapist had exonerated me in the eyes of the authorities. Not that they ever publicly cleared my name, of course. The stain of the accusation was still there, but at least I wasn't living under the threat of legal action anymore. I doubled down on my work. My superiors noticed too. I started earning promotions, slowly climbing the ranks and gaining responsibilities that challenged me in ways I hadn't expected. Leadership came naturally, and for the first time in years, I felt capable, like I wasn't just surviving, but thriving. Every small victory felt like reclaiming a piece of the life I'd lost. But even as I built something new, The past had a way of creeping in. It started with the messages. They came sporadically at first. Texts from Lily, always vague and emotional. I need to talk to you. Please, I'm sorry. I just want to make things right. I ignored every one of them. What was there to say? Words couldn't undo the damage she'd done, and I wasn't interested in hearing her excuses. Then came the calls. They were less frequent, but more desperate. She'd leave voicemails, her voice shaky and raw. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm trying to be better. Please, just give me a chance to explain. Explain? What was there to explain? She'd already admitted the truth. She lied because she was jealous, because she wanted attention, because she couldn't stand seeing me happy. There wasn't some hidden, noble reason behind her actions. She'd been selfish and cruel, and now she was dealing with the consequences. One night, after a particularly long day, I decided to listen to one of her voicemails. Not because I cared, but because I wanted closure. I wanted to hear her voice, hear her excuses, and confirm that I was right to keep her out of my life. Hey, she began, her voice trembling. I know you hate me, and you have every right to. I messed up more than I can ever say. I was stupid and selfish, and I didn't think about what I was doing to you. I felt like I was losing everything, and I wanted someone to blame. I know that's not an excuse. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. For a moment, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel anything. Her words washed over me, hollow and meaningless. An apology couldn't erase what she'd done. It couldn't give me back the friendships, the opportunities, the time I'd lost. And it definitely couldn't rebuild the trust she'd shattered. I deleted the message. Life continued to move forward. My work took me to new places. Conferences, collaborations, even leadership training programs that put me on track for a future I hadn't thought possible. I started taking online classes in software engineering, combining my military skills with my passion for coding. It was exhausting but rewarding, a reminder that I was capable of more than Lily's lie had tried to define me as. As I built my career, I began to reconnect with the idea of happiness. I traveled during my time off, exploring cities I'd only ever seen in photos. I made friends who didn't know anything about my past, people who saw me for who I was now, not who my sister's lies had painted me as. It felt like freedom. But the past wasn't done with me yet. One evening, as I was settling into my apartment after a long day, my phone buzzed with a text from my mom. We hadn't spoken in months. My choice, not hers. But the message caught my attention. Lily is in trouble, it read. She needs your help. I stared at the screen, conflicted. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to let Lily handle her own mess for once. But curiosity got the better of me, and I typed back a terse response. What kind of trouble? The reply came quickly. She's struggling to stay afloat. She's lost her job, she's behind on rent, and she doesn't know what to do. She wants to talk to you. I set the phone down and walked away. The audacity of it all was staggering. She'd ruined my life, and now she wanted my help to fix hers? It was almost laughable. 2 days later, Lily herself reached out. This time, it wasn't a text or a voicemail. It was a video call. Against my better judgment, I answered. Her face appeared on the screen, thinner and more haggard than I remembered. Her once bright eyes were dull, ringed with dark circles that told the story of sleepless nights. She looked broken. I don't want to bother you, she began, her voice small. But I didn't know who else to call. I didn't respond, waiting for her to continue. I messed up, she admitted, her voice cracking. Not just with you, but with everything. I've burned bridges with everyone else. Mom can't help, and Dad, he won't even talk to me anymore. I'm at rock bottom, and I don't know what to do. I stared at her, the silence stretching between us. Part of me wanted to feel pity, to reach out and offer her some kind of lifeline. But a larger part of me, the part that remembered the nights I'd spent crying in frustration and despair, couldn't summon the empathy. What do you want from me, Lily? I asked finally. I don't know, she whispered. I want a chance to fix things, to make things right with you. I shook my head. You can't make this right, Lily. You destroyed my life, and now you want me to help you fix yours? That's not how this works. I'm sorry, she said, tears streaming down her face. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't know what to do. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. Figure it out, like I had to. You made your choices, Lily, and now you're living with the consequences. That's not my responsibility. Her sobs grew louder, but I didn't waver. For once, I was putting myself first. I hope you find your way, I said quietly. But you're not going to find it with me. And with that, I ended the call. Isasakusa. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of finality. Lily was no longer a weight I had to carry, no longer a storm cloud looming over my life. I had finally closed the door on the chapter she'd tried to write for me, and I was ready to move forward. For good. Life moved on. My work kept me busy, my projects thrived, and for the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't tethered to the past. I stopped checking for messages from family, stopped wondering if they'd change, stopped hoping for some kind of resolution. I didn't need their closure anymore. I'd made my own. One evening, as I wrapped up work on an app I'd been designing, I realized I hadn't thought about Lily in weeks. Not out of bitterness, but because my life had finally outgrown the shadow of her lies. She was just a part of my story now, not the whole thing. I've built something I'm proud of. My career, my friendships, and my independence aren't things anyone gave me. They're things I earned. And as I look ahead, I know my focus is where it should be, forward. So yeah, that's where I'm at now, Reddit. My life isn't some grand redemption arc, and I'm okay with that. I'm not trying to rise above or prove anything to anyone. I'm just living. And honestly, it's enough. Lily hasn't reached out again since that last call, and the rest of my family has mostly fallen silent too. I guess they finally realized I'm not coming back. It's not about holding grudges, it's about boundaries. I don't hate them. I just don't need them in my life anymore.